Hello, and welcome to another marvelous video. Thanks for joining us as we look to travel through the backstory of another iconic character from the world of Tekken. Today, we are going to talk about Paul Phoenix. Paul Phoenix is one of the most well-known characters in the Tekken franchise. He employs the judo combat technique in his fights and is one of only 4 characters, along with Yoshimitsu, Nina Williams, and Heihachi Mishima, to have featured in every Tekken game to date. So fasten your seatbelts as we start the journey to Paul Phoenix's origins. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
I'm the best there is on Earth. Watch out, universe, 'cause here I come!
Paul Phoenix, origin explored. Paul Phoenix originally appeared in Tekken 1 and has since appeared in every game iteration. He is a hot-headed and aggressive character who is driven to be the finest fighter in the universe. He also despises the Mishima clan and everyone linked with it. Let's find out why as we start from the top. As I mentioned before, in Tekken 1, we are introduced to Paul, an American judo specialist who is motivated to be the greatest in the world and travels the world looking for the right opponent. This ultimately leads Paul to enter the King of Iron Fist tournament to eliminate his opponents and discover his ideal opponent. The only combatant in this tournament regarded on the same level as Paul is a fighter called Kazuya Mishima, with whom he once battled to a tie. Paul regards Kazuya as a rival, yet Kazuya regards him as nothing more than a slight bother at best. In his final cinematic ending, we see more of Paul in his training room, where he smashes a stack of 3 glass blocks with his fist before kicking 2 glass boxes into the air. He then concentrates his attention on a wall bearing a photo of Kazuya Mishima and smashes through it with his hand. Next, we see Paul in Tekken 2. Paul did well in the first King of Iron Fist tournament, but despite being the only participant foolish enough to fight and defeat a fully grown brown bear, he was beaten by Kazuya in the last round over a ferocious combat that lasted hours. Paul left the Mishima estate, shaking his head in bewilderment, and returned to New York. He got work as a bouncer in the South Bronx, where his ego and hubris drove him into countless conflicts with unsavory people, all of whom were defeated by his judo methods. After months of hard street fighting across the United States, Paul returns with tremendous confidence, thinking himself to be the best fighter in the world, and of course, determined to win the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2. In Paul's Tekken 2 cinematic conclusion, he is riding his motorcycle down a mountainside roadway when an avalanche occurs, blocking his route with large rocks. Paul hops off his bike and punches through a boulder with a single blow, opening a passage. In Tekken 3, for the second time in a row, Paul Phoenix proceeds to the last round of the previous competition, gaining the chance to face Kazuya Mishima. However, due to a multi-car collision on the highway, Paul could not arrive on time for the match and was forced to forfeit. However, Paul gets invited to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3 19 years later. Despite his age, Paul thinks he is in the finest form of his life and joins the competition, expecting to win the tournament that has escaped him so far. We see Paul riding his motorcycle again in the Tekken 3 final cinematic. He cuts in front of an oil tanker, which is noticed by a police officer, and Paul obtains a ticket after some haggling. Next, chronologically, Paul appears in the game Tekken Tag Tournament, released in 1999. Despite the appearance being non-canonical, it was revealed that he finally confronted Kazuya in the end. Paul emerges out of nowhere and hits Kuma, knocking him unconscious. When Paul returns his attention to Kazuya, he notices that he has vanished. In Tekken 4, we saw Paul was unbeaten once more in the 3rd King of Iron Fist tournament, even defeating Ogre in the final round. Believing he had won, Paul returned home, but his happy ending was brief as Ogre morphed into his second form, True Ogre, and the competition proceeded after his departure, with Jin Kazama becoming the true triumphant. Although Paul claimed to be the real tournament champion, few believed him, and even those who did became tired of his attitude. Paul stumbled across a newspaper ad promoting the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4 one day. He joins the tournament once more, blazing with the ambition to show that he is the true champion. We see in Paul's non-canonical ending that he has gained complete control of the Mishima Zaibatsu. However, he delegated the day-to-day work to others, reducing his executive role to little more than a job title while he partied all day and night. Next, we see Paul strolling with a woman who we can assume is on a date with him. He tells her to call a cab, and while she is away, he glances at himself in a glass pane. The lights turn on inside the structure, revealing that it is a dojo with a large image of Paul on the wall. We next witness Paul's date finding a cab and calling him, but he ignores her. The screen goes white, and we see Paul in his garage about to start his motorbike. "Ain't my style," he says, taking off his red-tinted glasses and tossing them away. Then Paul drives away, with his competitive spirit wholly restored. Paul returns in Tekken 5. During the previous tournament, Paul was looking forward to contesting with Kazuya Mishima, whom he hadn't seen in over 2 decades. But, as usual, Kuma got in his way. Paul started well against Kuma, but quickly became frantic because of Kuma's determination. When he was delivered a brutal hit by Kuma and lost the bout, he realized he had been overconfident. After his defeat, Paul resumed training since he had lost some vital critical lessons and had strayed from the road to becoming a great fighter. Paul attended the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5 2 months later, determined to show once and for all that he is the best fighter in the world. We see Paul practicing in a little cabin in the concluding cinematic instead of riding a motorcycle for a change. We also see Paul shattering a wall with an image of an alien on it, similar to his original Tekken ending. However, in his first Tekken ending, it was a photo of Kazuya rather than an extraterrestrial. We next witness an outer space colony playing a message recorded by Paul, which says, "Anytime, any place, bring it on, ya aliens." Then it zooms out, revealing hundreds of UFOs en route to Earth. The rematch between Paul Phoenix and Kuma at the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5 was tough, with Paul emerging victorious, as we saw in Tekken 6. Despite his triumph, Paul was very fatigued, rendering him unable to compete in the rest of the competition, so he didn't receive any prize money. Paul was already burdened by his mound of debt when he discovered that a new King of Iron Fist tournament would be conducted shortly. He was convinced that his debt problems would be resolved if he won the event. Paul decided to form a squad to improve his chances of winning. He reviewed his approach with his friend and King of Iron Fist tournament veteran, Martial Law, who believed that a team of 3 would outperform a team of 2. Martial Law approached famed fighter Steve Fox, who accepted his offer, and the 3 traveled to Japan for the 6th edition of the King of Iron Fist tournament. In his cinematic ending, we saw Paul and Law creating several obstacles for warriors to be unable to compete. Everything proceeded as planned, with Paul and Law meeting in the finals. The setting transforms into a boxing ring as Paul and Law prepare to fight. Law's kick hits Paul in the face as both men attack each other, but Paul's punch hits Law in an unexpected position, leading both to go down. Steve Fox was spotted among the onlookers, shrugging his shoulders in confusion despite the draw result. After making his next non-canonical appearance in Tekken Tag Tournament 2 as a playable character, Paul returns in Tekken 7. The excitement in the audience was evident as Paul Phoenix, the golden kid of the martial arts world, stepped into the ring. When his opponent's name was announced over the venue's loudspeakers, he could only scratch his skull in amazement. Yes, you guessed correctly, it was Kuma once more. Kuma, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found. According to word on the street, the bear had dropped out of the contest. The ring announcer alerts the audience of a last-minute alteration to the fight card. Paul is relieved as he anticipates the arrival of his long-awaited human opponent, but it wasn't Kazuya, as he had thought, but a black and white bear whose rage had flared owing to Paul's antics. The black and white bear was the loyal pet, best friend, and bodyguard of Ling Xiaoyu. Yes, it was Panda. Paul was also present to assist Martial Law in finding a stronger fighter to lead the dojo, and Paul claimed to be one, but Law rejected it since it would be a horrible idea for Paul to head a dojo again like last time after almost winning the 3rd tournament. Instead, Law spread the word that if any powerful fighters were interested in trying out for the position, they should come and demonstrate their combat abilities. Challenger after challenger arrived, but none were talented enough for Paul or Law. Paul celebrates his triumph over Panda at his cinematic ending. However, the audience begins to boo Paul for overcoming Panda. Paul is subsequently forced to depart the arena as the audience starts attacking him by hurling different weapons at him, most notably a sword. In Law's conclusion, Paul assists his closest buddy Martial Law in a handicap bout against Feng Wei after the latter is overwhelmed by his fighting style. After Law aids him in the battle, Paul is able to beat Feng by knocking him out with a devastating burning fist. On the other hand, Feng refuses to accept defeat and releases his strong aura. Paul and Law flee in terror, knowing how deadly he is. Marvelous appearances of Paul Phoenix in other media. Paul has a cameo appearance as a tournament competitor in Tekken, the motion picture, which was a non-canon 2-part OVA series released in 1998. He may be seen dragging Michelle Chang away from the blazing ruins of the Mishima Laboratory at the climax. After making brief appearances as playable characters in games like Street Fighter Cross Tekken, along with Martial Law as his tag partner and Tekken Revolution, Paul makes his next appearance in the online mobile card game called Tekken Card Tournament. He plays as a tank, with his cards focused on compelling and destructive card stats at the expense of frequently losing a significant amount of hit points. He does not really draw fast and possesses very few healing cards, and those that he does have need him to lose HP max or strike the opponent. Despite these disadvantages, most players block while confronting him out of fear of receiving massive damage. Thus, by frightening his opponent into thinking he's about to attack, he may continue drawing and baiting the opponent through mind games. It's also possible to build a deck that focuses on his other abilities rather than damage, such as gaining cards when his cards are blocked, or sapping health from his adversary with a wide range of cards that tremendously dissuade obstructing by making the opponent lose hit points, safeguards, or a card if their block is missed or won. He's suitable for all skill levels and poses a threat to the majority of the other fighters, but Zhao Yu will give him difficulty because she draws far faster than he does. Panda is another problem for Paul because of her massive collection of cards that provide her with safety. Although he did not feature in the live-action film Tekken, which was released in 2010, it's mentioned in a scene that Paul was defeated by Law in less than 30 seconds. Next, Paul makes his appearance felt in the hit animated TV series released last year, Tekken Bloodline. Following Ogre's role in the disappearance of many contestants from the second tournament, Paul is one of the few competitors from the second tournament to return to compete in the third tournament. Paul becomes the tournament favorite after being described as one of the few to have matched both Heihachi and Kazuya. He befriends Jin, who inquires about Kazuya and Heihachi. Marshall, Paul's buddy and instructor, advised him that how one conducts oneself during a fight reflects one's heart. Paul easily wins his battles, beating both Julia Chang and Kuma 2 off-screen. He gets beaten by King 2 in the semi-finals. However, after his defeat, Paul stayed back in the tournament area to watch other matches. When Ogre eventually appears, Paul and the surviving fighters want to assist Jin, but are prevented by Heihachi, who reminds them that this combat is personal, and that Jin must win by himself. When Ogre evolves into True Ogre, Paul and the others eventually interfere and attempt to aid Jin, but are defeated by the Beast. Jin ultimately uses Devil Gene's power to defeat the monster. After verifying Jin's possession of the Devil Gene, Heihachi shoots him with a handgun, shocking Paul and the others. Jin then changes into Devil Jin and strikes Heihachi before fleeing into the darkness. The personality and looks of Paul Phoenix. Paul is a self-assured, muscle-bound person who never questions himself. This cockiness tends to get the best of him, as his ego spirals out of control, landing Paul in uncomfortable and unpleasant circumstances. Despite this, his haughty attitude has not altered throughout the years, and he continues to participate in contests to prove himself as the greatest fighter in the universe. Paul has always been presented as rude, short-tempered, noisy, kind-hearted, slightly dim-witted, and downright arrogant. He regards Kazuya Mishima as a rival. However, Kazuya regards him as little more than a bother at best. Despite their continuous squabbles, Paul and Martial Law have a close connection. Law is typically seen as Paul's mentor or advisor, and the two frequently find themselves in unusual situations with other characters. Paul is also close friends with Forrest Law and Steve Fox. Paul's idleness generally leads to him being bankrupt and in dire need of money, prompting him to either find temporary employment as a bouncer or enter a tournament in order to win the prize money and keep himself going for a bit longer. The scenario campaign cast from Tekken 6 is fully aware of Paul and Marshall's shenanigans and get-rich-quick schemes, and many folks would call both of them out for their heinous behavior. If we have to describe his looks, Paul is a muscular American with blue eyes, bushy brows, and his signature high flat top hairdo. Paul additionally has a scorpion tattoo on his right arm and 2 earrings in his left ear in Tekken 2. These earrings are only shown in this game, as they were removed in all subsequent iterations. He has a beard from Tekken 3. Paul is also seen in Tekken 4 with his hair down and knotted in a ponytail. In Tekken 8, he wears his hair down once more. He has short, side-parted hair that drapes over his face. The 2 most recognizable and frequently seen Paul Phoenix outfits are his black motorcycle leathers and his red judo gi, which he was also seen wearing in Tekken 4 with the top removed and tied around his waist. In this same game, he was also seen wearing a more laid-back outfit consisting of jeans and a t-shirt with a flaming skull image. His attire has occasionally been distinguished by glaring decorations like flames and emblems of a skull. Why was Paul Phoenix so deadly? Paul is a shining example of assertiveness, brutality, and powerful offense. His fighting style strongly focuses on raw strength punches, especially with powerful moves like Burning Fist, Hammer Punch, and Hammer of the Gods. His quick sweeps, one of the finest in the series, and charging attacks, together with his deadly wall combinations and juggles, can break through any resistance. Paul's defense is solid. Effective parries cause him to attack the opponent immediately, and several of his movements let him sway backwards or forwards, which may be utilized to avoid attacks and hurt opponents. Let's briefly talk about his 3 signature striking moves I mentioned. Burning Fist. It is also known as 10,000 Divine Fists of the Dragon King in the Japanese edition, and Paul Phoenix has been using it since Tekken 2 as an unblockable attack. It is comparable in execution and strength to the unblockable Charge Power Punch from Martial and Forest Law. Burning Fist, in contrast to Charge Power Punch, cannot be stopped once it has begun. The move may also be parried and reversed despite being unblockable. Similar to his counter hit Phoenix Smasher, if this move hits a standing opponent, they will be thrown rolling across the screen. Paul does this technique with his left hand at the first game's finish to show how it is done, but starting with Tekken 2, Paul utilizes right hand. Paul uses this move against Feng Wei in the Martial Law's character ending of Tekken 7, but Feng manages to live despite the attack's significant damage. In Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Paul also employs the Burning Fist as a component of his super art. Hammer Punch. Heihachi Mishima, Prototype Jack, and Paul Phoenix have employed the downward thrusting hammer punch, also known as Tile Splitter in Japan, since the first game. It may be utilized to prevent opponents from tech rolling, and in some situations, even rising to their feet, because it has a specific follow-up on a counter-strike. Paul may chain his Bone Breaker combo after a hammer punch starting in Tekken 2. This combo is known as Hangover. Up to Tekken 6, Heihachi was able to execute a similar string to Paul, but the ability lost its follow-up after that. In Tekken 7, it has a new follow-up move called the Hammer Beating. Hammer of the Gods. This maneuver debuted in Tekken 3 and is known as Axe Strike in the Japanese version. The move in Tekken Tag Tournament 2 and Tekken 6 will result in a bound. His signature move is called the Phoenix Smasher, which is basically a heavy power punch. This move is nicknamed as the Death Fist by fans due to the massive amount of damage it delivers, especially on a counter hit, where it also sends the opponent rolling across the screen, which is increased only when the attack connects cleanly. As seen by his throws, Paul uses a unique hybrid martial art based on Judo. Numerous additional components of different martial arts may be noticed in his approaches, such as karate-like features in his strikes, and even Baji Quan-like elements in his various chain leg kicks and back shoulder assaults. Paul's fighting technique is believed to have changed significantly after partaking in cross-training with his longtime training partners, Martial and Forest Law. His fighting style can also be described as traditional Judo, more precisely, Judo practiced prior to the removal of Atemiwaza, or striking techniques, from the syllabus.
10 seconds! 10 seconds! I'll be number 1!
Marvelous verdict. Paul has never won a King of Iron Fist competition, although coming close several times, particularly in Tekken 3. Paul has gradually turned into more of a comic character in terms of the plot, despite being initially put up as a potential competitor to Kazuya in the first game and having an arguably more serious role in the earlier games. The fact that he competes against Kuma 1 and Kuma 2, and that his endings have evolved to be funnier and more slapstick is pretty clear evidence of this. He is, nevertheless, one of the most well-known and adored Tekken characters of all time, as he has been there since the beginning. Who's your favorite Tekken character? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this video, remember to click the like and share button. I'll see you in the next one.